wonderful words of life. Amen. Thank you, sisters. Lovely singing. Um, right, so my name is Okeino McGowan, and I'll, even our, we doing the little talk today as it relates to why country living. Um, but maybe most of us already live in the country. Is it so? No? Okay. I just checking. All right, just checking. It's good to know our audience. So, you know, because I know some of us in the country, some may not be, we're considering it. And as it relates to country living, there's a lot of why and how and all of these things. And I trust that our time here, the entire camp, until we end on Sunday, a lot of those questions should be answered. All right. So let's have a word of prayer. Dear Father, who art in heaven, I just want to thank you for the opportunity you have granted us to be here today. As we look at the why of country living, dear Father, Lord, that's asks that you will be with us and lead us and guide us, dear God. And have your way, we pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. All right. So, yeah. So, all right. So, I got to work this communication with Andrew as it relates to the slides. All right. So, essentially, as it's broken down into four short sections, we telling you my story. I think it's always good to start with a story. Hope it's a good story. Well, at least I believe it is. We look at a few, godly counsel, and then we have a small look at some of the benefits of actually living in the country. And then, if time permits, we may have probably 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A, right, where we just chat with each other, your questions, your concerns. And try to answer as best as possible. There may be others in the audience who are more um, versed and they could answer. All right. So that's how we'll take it. Next slide. So it's a quote from Country Living, page 5, paragraph 1, and it says, "Few realize the importance of shunning so far as possible all association unfriendly to religious life. In choosing their surroundings, few make their spiritual prosperity the first consideration." Right? And I believe it's a true statement. Oftentimes it's okay, am I close to the stores or close to work? That type of thing. Those typically are the things that we have on our list as to where am I going to live. And not a lot of consideration is necessarily given to the spiritual side of things. All right. So let's jump into my story. So my wife and I, we came here expecting around 2018, the summer of 2018. And yeah, not, yeah. All right. So the summer of 2018. And in coming here, essentially, our decision was where can we find somewhere to rent that we can afford, and um, anyone close by that we know, because we're coming from Jamaica, right? New immigrants. Okay, my wife has an aunt in Scarborough. Then I have friends in Ajax, and my friend in Ajax found somewhere for us, a basement. So that was the place we landed. That's where we started out here, 2018. And then by the end of 2018, we had our firstborn. That's Luke. He's somewhere around. All right. So that's essentially where we started, in the basement. So we know, so just coming here, it was, I mean, first time seeing snow, right? I like, okay, all right. It wasn't necessarily like what I thought it would be from watching movies back then. Okay, so this is snow. This is what it is. Okay. Then you start, it's fine. Then you recognize that the snow melts and then it freezes and you can slide. All right. So that was another thing like, okay, fine. So all of these things are happening, right? But to fast forward a bit, we went through 2019, and then 2020 was supposed to be the year when we explore Canada, the year when, 2020 vision, right? Clear. But we all know what happened 2020. What happened? The pandemic. All right. So the pandemic happened. And that is where something has to change. So that's kind of where the you could go to the next slide. So from basement to mansion, right? So that's a picture of where we where we live. So from basement to mansion in quotes. We know it's not necessarily a mansion as you would imagine. Um, I kind of like to move, but all right. If I move, how far can I move away from this and it still be okay, sir? About a foot? Oh, oh yeah, yeah. Let's pop it off. Okay. No man, it's fine. Is it good? Yes. So 2020 hit, and we were like, all right, we're expecting. So that's with JJ, right? So we're like, okay, we're in a basement, one bedroom, one window. I think the window is on the verge of it's just a little too big to be in the Guinness Book of Records of smallest window in the world, right? Just a little too big for that. But it would be in probably the top 10, maybe, right, Grace? Yeah, it'd probably be in the top 10 of world's smallest windows. But anyway, but it was one of those. So we're like, we need to do something because we're expecting and we can't bring, a new baby in this environment. And it wasn't necessarily the best or most helpful, right? Um, so we started the search. So that's where the search started. So we're looking, and this took a while. So when we talk about country living and moving to the country, it's not a speed thing. It's not a rush to the finish line type of thing, right? It's a process and has to be one that is done prayerfully. So I know we have some folks here who are considering moving to the country. So I just want to put that out there. It's something that you have to do prayerfully, right? So to kind of make the story even more interesting, I was working in 2019, was a job that I said to my wife, January 1, I'm not going back, no matter what happened. I'm not going back. This was one of those decisions, right? Because man, I couldn't go beyond a year. It's very toxic. All right. So I actually got a job. And even though it's a pandemic, we had the blessings still in the pandemic, right? It was a blessing for my family. I mean, I know some persons, have other situations. So I got a job. Um, and then 2 weeks in the job, you're like, hey, everybody got to work from home. I was like, okay, got to work from home. So we had to pack up, took the PC, took it home, set up a makeshift office in the basement. And I mean, I'm living in a basement, so a part of the basement, obviously. And, doing that. So then our minds start to twirl like, okay, we need to leave here. Unfortunately, prices of houses start to go what? Up. So initially, we still weren't necessarily bent on country yet, right? We're looking kind of like probably Bowmanville, because in my mind, still thinking that I need to be able to drive to work when the pandemic ends, because initially it was 2 weeks. Yeah, man, let's go home for 2 weeks. Everything will cool down and then you can go back to work. That was what the media was saying, right? Well, we know what it's 2 years. Fine. So home, I was like, okay, what to do? The price, we were looking at houses that, decent, but because at the time the price wasn't necessarily flying off the shelf, as we would say, we were like, no, we're picking and no, not that. But a month passed, we're like, all right. They were like, okay, everything is now out of budget within a month. So what to do? So we're starting to look further. We're seeing places further, but then we're like, oh no, our broker guy was like, no, we won't be able to do that. And I was like, oh man, what to do? And we found a property, right? It was a nice 7-acre property, really nice property, right? It had a house, it had like we call a cabin, it had a barn and everything. I was like, yeah, this is it, right? went home and everything was going and right to the verge of like, yeah, we can make the move because, but this was kind of country. So like, we like, made the move. Got an email from work say, hey, you guys need to come back in. Da, da, da. I was like, and this would be like 3 hours from the work, right? So that wouldn't work. So I was like, all right, can't, you accept the offer, but we can't do it. So that got shut down right there, right? Because we're saying this process has to be based on what God wants for you. Understand? It can't be rushed. Because I mean, sometimes I was like, wonder if I had faith, I just went ahead. But then I'm like, you know what? I would have probably met all of these lovely folks from Madoc, and then that would be a major loss to my life. Presumption. So that's what I'm saying, right? You do have been presumptuous. So we lost, and then since that, every other home we saw, we were up. The bidding war started. We were outbid. Nothing. There's nothing happening. Nothing happening. It was up to a point where it's like you literally feel like the Lord is closing the doors, right? You're like, why can't we get a break? And then we move. So okay. So that was one winter. The next winter come in, and we're like, what's happening? So so, and it was going through right all over the place until finally we we found this place and we it came through, right? But in it coming through, I had to say, hey, there were like still questions like, can you live that far from work? This was the bank. Like, can you live that far from work? We're like, yeah, we can. We can, make arrangements and whatever, whatever. So that's a fine. But God so worked it out that the company I was at, they weren't forthcoming in saying you can work from home permanently. But the Lord opened another job that say you can work from home indefinitely. You just need to be in Canada. Anywhere in Canada you are, you're free to be there, but you just need to be in Canada, in the borders of Canada, right? And then I got that job like a week before we close and thing, and then we transitioned over. But if I, but the funny thing is, if I'd gotten that job prior to, then I'd have to wait 3 months in that job before then I could get a house because you have to have a 3 month period probation. Yeah. So that's pretty much how the Lord worked it out for us. So it has to be prayer. I'm just pushing that part. So prayer and waiting. Because many of the properties we saw prior to, and we were like, yes, we want that, we want that. Looking back, we're like, thank God, we never got that. We were even ecstatic about houses on the seven, like right on the seven. Think about it. Where realtor was like, it's not like that because a lot of noise, but we're like, we just want something. But what I've learned is that the devil also has a country property for all of us. For real, he has a country property for everyone too. Because moving to the country doesn't equate to the devil not knowing where you are. You get the point? Because Christ was tempted where? In the wilderness. So we'll get into some of the benefits of in the country where we can even expand on that. But I just want to put that out there. So no one leave with the impression that I need to run and need to find a country property today without much prayer. All right. Just want to put that out there. Okay. So we kind of talk about the move. So we moved and the growth. Friends coming from Ajax, where I had a landlord that mowed the lawn, that cleaned the snow, to now seeing snow about a 2 foot high off the ground and have to clean it myself. It's a two different ball game. Right? Said that's in a good year, definitely. And just coming from Jamaica, right? So that was, I was like, that was for us. Like, it's different because I grew up in the country in Jamaica, but country in Jamaica is different. What we worry about in Jamaica in the country there is if the water will be in the pipe, and if the breeze will blow hard enough and the light will go away. That's our problem in the country there. Or if somebody will maybe take away your livestock, like your goat or your cow, right? That's a problem there. Or if you have a year of drought, meaning because it's a tropical island. All right. So that's really our story. Like just that process And as I said, it wasn't a short one. It took over a year and some months to finally get somewhere. That's short for some people. That's true. And maybe and some person and it all depends what you want. You have to be specific with God, right? Because we were specific and we kind of got one. We said like a minimum of 3 acres. Not to say that you have to have 3 acres. You could have one. Because if you have 1 acre, even a quarter acre surrounded by land, crown land, it's almost all your land anyway. And the funny thing is, where we live, we have the smallest piece of property there. Everyone else is 100 acre plus, right, around us. So we have the smallest, we're stuck right between them. But anyway, it's a nice buffer anyway. So the Lord has really blessed us with that. So as I say, so from basement to mansion, and that can be your story too. May have different details, but it can, right? But one thing is very important to consider more than anything, as the first statement we saw, that spiritual aspect. And we'll just look at some additional statements. If you, Andrew, if you could. So these are some godly counsels. So let's see what we can glean, from the one of my favorite authors, a lady called Sister White. We call her Sister White. You may know of her, I've heard of her before, but is one of my favorite authors. And I hope she'll become yours too. All right. So the world over, cities are becoming what? Hotbeds of, on every hand are the sights and sounds of evil. Is that true? Okay. Everywhere are enticements to sensuality and dissipation. The tide of corruption and crime is constantly swelling. Every day brings the record of violence, robberies, murders, suicides, and crimes unnameable. And when I read this, I was like, what would she say today? If this is in her time, what would happen today, right? I mean, when I remember when I just came to Canada, coming from Jamaica. Anybody know anything about Jamaica? I don't have to tell you the details. But I found it so strange that in Canada, they make so much big fuss about the weather. I found it strange when I just got here, right? And about it's going to rain because unfortunately the country where I'm from, it's pretty rough, right? It's pretty rough. Because what we concerned about is if you're going to make it home, if you go on the road, and it's not about and it's not anything to do with the weather. It has to do with somebody else gets you, right? So, I kind of find that when I came here, that was like one of the strange things to me about snowfall is a problem. Like, okay, eh, we just know hurricanes coming, fine, yeah, but you're worried about evil men. All right, so one of the most subtle and dangerous temptation that assails the children, and this is important to protect our kids and the youth in the cities, is the love of pleasure, holidays, and numerous games. Horse race draw thousands, and the world of excitement and pleasure attracts them away from sober duties of life. Money that should have been saved for better use is fretted away for amusements. All right. So some of these things kind of change from her time to our time, but like video games, that's something, persons spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to buy the latest um, video game consoles and games to play, or there be subscriptions or whatever they do now. I don't modern stuff. But when I was younger, it was like what, you know, PS3, Nintendo, yeah, Nintendo 64, and stuff like that, right? But no, it's probably Fortnite and other stuff. So it was not God's purpose that people should what? Be crowded into cities, huddled together in well, terraces, because I kind of see so clear, and tenements. In the beginning, he placed our first parents amidst the beautiful sights and sounds he desires us to rejoice in today. The more nearly we come into harmony with God's original plan, the more favorable will be our position to secure health of body and mind and soul. So back to our speaker this morning, he spoke about character, right? So we talk more about, we see a little on that as the benefits, right? So, so this is a counsel, or some of the counsels. There are many more statements. The entire book is there, Country Living. I encourage us to all to read it or reread it, right? But these are some of the counsel that's given. So, as was stated, it's not a move to the country to say you're running to hide because the devil knows where you are. You are still tempted in the country, right? And you can also move to the country and take the city life, the city mindset with you, which then negates the fact of moving to the country anyway, right? And one thing is needful, much prayer. So, quick story. A friend of mine, she has a friend, and her friend came and said, "Hey, we need to leave. We need to leave. And we found a property and we're leaving, we're leaving, we're leaving." And they raced out to this property. Big house, big yard. Few months they report that, hey, nothing can be done. Like with the property is diseased. The trees won't bear. It's barren. Why? They made haste and wasted their substance because it wasn't God's plan. That wasn't God's will for that property. And they regret it because the house needs repair. The trees are fungus covered. All of these things. I was like, but we're stuck here because, you know, who else is going to buy this property from us? Because the people around the community, they know it's no good, so they never bought it. But you're running and you're buying it. All right, fine. So that's the thing. When you're planning to move, it's good to, if it is that, for example, you could live in the area or probably rent for a short time to just get acclimatized to that area. That's one option. And also speak to your neighbors, speak to folks around, because they can tell you that, oh, that property, man, that's no good. Or you may find out that everyone in the community wants to get it. There's like, okay, all right, there must be something about this property, right? So those are some of the stuff. Um, and one other thing, as we look at the council, remembering Lot. You know the story of Lot? Lot's wife? Not necessarily his wife alone. We blame Lot's wife, but Lot made the bad decision first. So continue. So it says, and Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, and it was well watered, right? Everywhere, where um, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest to Zoar. And then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves one from another. So we know Lot separated from Abraham. And Abraham dwelt in the land of Canaan. And Lot, what did Lot do? Dwell in the cities of the plain and pitch his tent towards Sodom. So if you're currently in the city, we're not hitting you over the head and say you're a Lot. But the counsel is given that it's not the best environment for your spiritual well-being, right? It's not the best environment. Because we often say we're pilgrims here, right? And if you're a pilgrim, you're on a journey. So don't be too fixated and settled that, hey, I have to stay here and I can't leave this place and stuff. As I said, prayer and see what the Lord does. So what are the benefits though? So here it is that, okay, we moved to the country. So what? I was in the city. I had the supermarket down the road. I had what we have here, A&W. And A&W has as well. They have a veggie burger, they say, and stuff like that. So I have all of these convenience. I can run to. But what are other benefits though of living in the country? All right. So closer to nature. That's one of the things. Coming here, no man. What? You don't go too fast, brother, until I tell you. All right. So closer to nature. So first time seeing a blue jay was when I moved to my country property, right? Saw a blue jay. See, we saw a cardinal, saw cardinals. And then when you go outside and you just listen and you hear no cars and you just hear, hear these sounds and you hear the frogs in their little ponds or whatever. It's so beautiful, right? It's just it's a different thing. And the road that we are on is it's a no exit road. We call it a dead end. And so you just don't see any cars or anything. Um, and it's just so quiet, right? So closer to nature. And continue now, Andrew. And you can breathe. It's nice, fresh air. And you see the little frogs. If you see frogs, that's good. You don't like them, but you trust me, you want to see them. If you see frogs in your area, that's good. That mean the air is good. Yeah, I mean the air is good. Why is it so? I never question why it's, but I just heard it, so let's believe it. Breathe through the skin. Ah, all right. That's thank you. So everybody heard that? So the frogs breathe through the skin. Yeah. So where I live is called land of lakes, right? So when we were driving and saw the school, Lando Lakes, I was like, okay, land of lakes. That's why we have so many lakes around. That explains a lot of things. Explains the bugs too, but hey, they have to do their thing, right? So yeah, bugs. So clean air. That's one of the benefits. One of the benefits of living in the country. It's not polluted. Also, before we would yeah, so leave that there. But the smokes, who okay, so there was fire up north of you, right? Was it worse for us or for the persons in the city? In the city. Because there's fire, and I'm like, the fire is north of me. Yes, there's some smoke in my yard, but what I'm looking at the TV, it's too different. It's like night and day, and I'm like, so we're 2 or 3 days and we're clear, we're outside again, but the city is just full, and I'm like, I said to my wife, how is that? I was like, okay, probably trees around us. I don't know. I don't know the science behind it, right? The trees. Yeah, I don't know the science behind it, but I know that okay, we are closer to the fire, but we have less effect. Interesting. So hey, move to the country for that alone, right? So as I said this before, less noise, more peaceful, right? You don't you don't have to. Well, I encourage you to close your doors, like lock it. But if you don't, it's really unlikely that anyone is going to go in your house. A bear? Yeah, I mean a bear, but but you're locked. And that doesn't usually happen, right? The bears will find it. Trust me, the bears prefer to have berries than you. They prefer berries. Yeah, berries are much better. And trust me, the animals really don't want to come. There are animals that look at you and they really don't want to do you anything. They're like, all right, so that guy is big. If I get hurt, I can't eat, and my enemies are the whatever other predators for the animals that will get them. So they really don't want to encounter you. But if it happens, then yeah. All right. Next, safer for children, right? Because now I can have my son and daughter outside. We're inside. They're running around the yard and they're riding their bike and stuff like that. I couldn't do that in Ajax any at all, right? Couldn't do that because I mean there's no space anyway to do it. And if you do it, then the cars will get them up and down on the road. All right. More space. More space. When this when the spirit of prophecy said that you live like kings and queens, right? So that's why I say I moved from a basement to a mansion, right? More space. I can relax. It takes more maintenance because I have to cut the grass and all of that. But after all of that is done, it's really a much nicer, right? Right, Mel? More space. Well, Mel is like, this is this. No, I have a lot, so I'm tired and I'm done. But it's fine. All right, next. All right, and this is one of the crucial parts: the character building. If anything I've said is gone through and you forget about it, this is where it is: character building. Because things are a little slower in the country. Some things take more efforts in the country, right? Because now you have to clean snow, you have to prepare your firewood if you go that route. Um, and what I recognize is that being in the country, you have to be intentional, intentional. Because for us, when we're in Ajax, we just home, I say, oh, let's just go grab something to eat. You spend more money. No, we have to be intent. We have to say, okay, we have a budget because wanting supermarkets in the country are it's more expensive, But then you can offset that with this with the last point that I'll have there. But then, so you have to be intentional, and the Lord wants us to be intentional. Our walk with God is not something that should be haphazard. Should just be, oh, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that, and we don't have intentionality. So the country calls us to be intentional because if we're not, because if I don't, what I do today or what I do in the summer period really tells me what type of winter I'm going to have. Understand? Because if I don't prepare the firewood, no, have everything packed and everything, and we say it's seasoned, I mean to be dry, then the winter is going to be a tough one. So it is that if our walk today, if our growth spiritually today, we don't take care of our relationship with Christ when he returns, it's going to be a tough one, right? So the character building is very important. And the last one, you have the ability to grow your own food. You can do that in the city, yes, but not so much. You can grow your own food. And then that offsets the cost of, the more expensive supermarkets, right? But there you can drive for an hour or so to a better supermarket if you need to. But you can grow your own food. I never knew that squash, back home we just call it pumpkin, right? But squash. When I saw how the squash plant grows, I was like, whoa, the male flower comes first and it comes closer to the roots. And then after a while, as it extends, the females come and you see the fruits, and then the flower opens. And when you look at it, you see the male and the female parts, two different things, right? You it looks and the female one looks just like the female part, and the male one looks just like the male parts. Yeah. You need to get a squash plant. It will amaze you. You need to live in the country. So you can watch it grow. Oh, yes. Yeah. So when you go to the supermarket, you don't get any of that lesson, right? And when I check it out, it's just a male and a female plant, and it's quite binary. Anyway, I won't go there. Um, but it's beautiful to see the plants grow. And you're like, whoa. And then the bee comes, and the bee from or the butterflies or whatever insect comes, and they go and they do their thing. The black flies, or I would say the dare flies, if you want. Okay. Wasp. All right. I don't want to talk too much about the insects, guys, because they bite you too, right? Yeah, they do serve their purpose. But they come and they do their thing, and it's just, you just see all of that work. It's amazing. And you see, like, the nature shows God's work. You see all of that in nature, right? And it's so beautiful. And the nicest part is when you get to pick that squash and you cure it, or you take out the potatoes, or get the corn, and you cook a meal. Ah, and the beans, man, a nice bean stew, or like a soup with your pumpkin, your potatoes, and your beans, your squash, and all of these stuff. It's really good. You appreciate it more. Your tomatoes, Kendra, right? And that sweetness tastes different. It's all of these things are some of the benefits, right? So there's just a few pictures. So when we just came, we had small garden. So you see, we have our beans. See my kids, and there's pumpkins there. So they had a butternut squash, and then some other bacon type pumpkins, and we had like zucchinis, carrots, sugar snap, um, and so I think that probably was from the first year. Beets and all of these things. I don't. There's no potatoes there, but that's just some of the blessings of just being in the country, right? And you get to see these things. And it takes time because, okay, it's not going to the supermarket to buy it. So delayed gratification also is good, right? You can wait and stuff. All right. So I don't even know what time it is or how much time I use, but eh? 10 to 4. Okay. Am I time? So no, no. Okay. So like like two questions. I give you one answer, maybe. From anyone. And then we end. Yes. How did moving into the country affected the dynamic of your family? All right. So the kids, they just have to go where we go. Because I mean, they're like 3 and like 1, right? The baby, so fine. All they want is space. So remember, we're in a basement. That probably the entire basement was probably just over that section, right? So with a boy that wants to run, that was good. My wife and I were on the same page. So that wasn't any issue. We're on the same page from day one. We knew exactly that, okay, when we get children, what what type of work environment, because I would, we homeschool. She would be, be the primary teacher, secondary teacher type thing, and stuff like that. And it would be a single income house that we already agreed on that before kids. So when kids come and move to the country, that wasn't an issue for us. All right. So so yeah. All right. Cool. So yes.
To the country, we have to change our lifestyle.
Yeah.
Meaning, we have to go to a single income home so that we can fall into God's will.
Yes.
So in other words, we shouldn't be so hard and fast and sticking with two jobs. We should be open to wanting God's will in our life,
Yeah.
which is change, right?
Yeah, that's what I believe.
Yeah.
So the thing is, even with us moving and have to be, because we moved like 2 hours and a half away from where we were, is the fact that okay, yes, we want to get a mortgage, but then what type of mortgage? I mean, I know some person, oh, debt free stuff, which is good, but we got a mortgage that is basically equivalent to our rent that we were paying then. So, and essentially, every time I pay that mortgage, I get equity. So, and if I was supposed to find another basement in Ajax, I would be almost $2,000. All right. So with that said, thank you for your for listening, and I trust that as you